And so as I go into this, I'm going to share my testimony. I grew up in church most of my life. I was never really plugged into ministries and stuff like that. I actually grew up at the church my cousin and I go to now, Lighthouse Church of All Nations. But I never got involved with youth ministry or anything like that. Grew up in a pretty believing home as far as my family believed in God, but we never went deep into the things of God. I knew I had a praying mom who sought the salvation of my family. I would remember her praying in the morning, on the weekends. I remember I'd wake up in the middle of the night with oil on my head. I didn't know why. But I just remember that she would pray fervently. And as a kid, I didn't understand why, because I didn't see any reason for her to be praying. I didn't see anything going good. I seen the opposite. Everything that she was praying for, it seemed like the opposite was happening in my family. And as I grew older now, and as I see how God works in things, we want to see Him move now. And we don't see that things are perfect in His timing. That the prayers that my mom had on her knees 15 years ago are what leads me to a place like this today. And so I grew up without a strong understanding of God and who He was. I believed in Him enough to pray in moments of need and in moments of like despair. My heart was at least pure in that. And I would be what most people considered a good child. I didn't get in much trouble. But around the age of 17, I remember I started going to parties for the first time. I started to try things out of curiosity. And 1 week in the summer of 2015, I decided to stay with my cousin at my uncle's house. And around this time, my uncle was going through a hard time, just personal stuff in life. And that week, I'm at his house till Wednesday. And I'm actually hanging out there, then going to party, and then coming back daily. And I remember Wednesday comes, and I played baseball for my high school during the summer. And I seen my uncle at the top of the stairs, and he had a black tank top. And I look at him, and something inside of me told me to give him a hug. But I was so embarrassed of what I did the night before. Instead, all I could say was, "Can you give me a ride home because I have a game?" And he says, "All right, give me 20 minutes. And I go into the kitchen, and I go to make some food in his house. And about 5 minutes later, I hear the door close. It just slams. And I look, and he takes off. He left. So now as a 17-year-old, all I'm thinking of is, how am I going to get to my game? Now, I'm not worried about why he left. I get home somehow, and the next day comes, go to my game, and Friday comes, and my mom's out doing some errands, and I get a call from my sister-in-law knocking on my door. She says, "I'm down the street. You need to get in my car. We got to go to your uncle's house." And so I'm asking her why. She doesn't know. I'm thinking something happened to my grandma because she was sick at the time. And so she picks me up, and I'm calling my mom to see what is happening, and no one's answering me. So the last person I decided to call is my dad because he's working full-time. I don't want to bother him. And so he answers the phone after I called twice, and I said, "What happened to Abuelita? Is she okay?" And he didn't say anything. I said, is she okay? What's going on?" And that was the first time I ever heard my dad just break down on the phone crying. And I don't know if you guys ever seen movies where someone's talking, it's like they see someone moving their mouth, but they don't hear the words. I remember I heard my dad break down, and I didn't hear what he said. And then he repeated himself, and he said that my uncle took his life after taking the life of his ex-fiancée. And I remember everything just started buzzing, and my sister-in-law started talking to me, and I couldn't even hear what she was saying. All I said was, "Go, go, go," like she needed to hurry up. I couldn't even tell her what happened. And so we get to his neighborhood. It didn't happen there, but when we pull up to his street, there's about 15 squad cars up and down the street, and I just see cops walking in and out of his house grabbing things. And nothing hit my heart. Yeah, it was still like nothing was real going on. I just see my cousin crying. I see my grandma crying. I see, my dad comes and he's crying. And I told myself from that day, none of that was going to affect what I did from that moment on. And it did the exact opposite for the next 4 years. I remember within 2 days, I was out getting high every day with my friends. I was drinking to try to find myself and say that this thing didn't affect me. But I never knew what healing was. What I did was I crumbled that moment and I put it in my back pocket, thinking that was healing and dealing with it. But how many of you know you tuck away things, all it does is yield bad fruit over time? And so me thinking I was healing myself by hiding it Something was stinking over the years. I began to hurt people out of my own hurt. I began to try to find fulfillment, wholeness in everything that would never give me it. Things of continuing to smoke weed. I would wake up in the morning and get high. I wouldn't be able to go to sleep without getting high. I would have insomnia, not being able to sleep. Just disrespectful to every person because I was hurting and they didn't know. And I remember it came to a point in 2018, I found myself in the lowest place. And I would just sit in my bedroom and I would look at the ceiling and I would just be crying. Crying because of emptiness. And I would still be sitting there smoking, crying. And it was so weird because I'd never heard God. I never talked to him. But even in that place, I was like, God, if you're real, you have to do something. Like, I feel so alone. And I was never hearing anything. And one day, Matt started traveling about a year before then, or that year. And he says, can you go to a conference I'm hosting? I need someone to sell T-shirts. And so I said, you know what? I've been alone for the past 2 months, didn't talk to anybody. I said, I'm going to go just to be around people. And I go Wednesday, I sell T-shirts, and that was it. And then Thursday comes, and Matt over there says, you're not going to sell T-shirts today. The Lord says you need to be in the service tonight. And so I sit in the back row, second to last row with my mom, and that was the first time I heard Matt preach live. And I remember I was hearing it. I was new to the power of God, new to the Spirit of God. And I remember he's saying, what are you going to do at midnight? When the prison cells are open, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay locked away? Or are you going to walk in the freedom that someone else already paid a price for? And I remember when he said that, I started tearing up, and I thought I was just getting emotional. And then he calls an altar call, and I don't respond to it. And then when that happens, I said, God, if you're real and this is you, you need to reveal yourself to me because I'm done trying. So I told God I give up. And about a minute later, a man who just serves the house walks up to me, and he says, the Lord says, I need to pray for you. Can I? And so I'm like, all right, everyone's hearing the Lord here apparently. So I said, go for it. And he lays his hand on me, and he just said 3 words. He just said, in Jesus' name. And I remember I felt this blanket of fire get poured over me. And I just felt something pull from my heart, and I began just weeping, and I couldn't stop crying. It's like the more I tried to stop crying, it got harder, it got more intense, and I heard the voice of God speak to me for the first time. And he said, son, the joy that you've been wanting has been in front of you this whole time in me, but it's on the other side of the fear that you've been living in daily. Lord says, you've been giving more life to the fear in front of you than the life that I've actually given you. Are you going to look at me? And I remember I walked out of that place, and as an immature 17-year-old, the first thought of my mind was that was coincidence and that was my feelings. But I knew something just happened that I never encountered before. But doubt immediately starts coming in. And so I go to a restaurant, and I'm eating pizza, and this guy I never even meet before says, can I sit down next to you? And I said, go for it. He says, can I share my testimony? I said, go for it. And when he starts talking to me, I don't think he realized what he was saying, and he starts saying everything that I was living in. He says, I was an athlete in high school, good grades and everything. He said, but then something happened that made me switch everything. I started smoking weed all the time. He said he started getting involved with these ideas and goals of his life that were never intended for him. But he says this all started when he got a phone call in high school that his uncle committed suicide. And I remember in that moment, like everything just crumbled in me. And the reality of God just hit my heart in that moment in that restaurant. Of how everything that happened for the previous months led up to that moment, and how intentional God was in every single detail. That I never see myself sharing something like this with people. I wouldn't even be able to talk to the person next to me in front of my class. I was isolated in my senior year. I would have a pass to go to the counselor's office to cry because I didn't understand how to process. I didn't understand how to mourn something. But I realized that everything I was looking for the previous 4 years to satisfy me was found in a person. So tonight, as we go forward in this, I feel like if there's people in here, if there's anybody watching, and you're feeling like you're inadequate, like you've messed up too much and that God is not going to use you, or you feel like you don't know where to find yourself, you're only going to find yourself in Him. And whether you know it or not, Jesus is the person that you're looking for. And he's the only one that can ever fully satisfy your soul. There's a reason you may do things and you have to keep going back to them because it doesn't satisfy you. It doesn't fulfill you. It doesn't fill the emptiness. It's not a burden to follow him. It's a privilege to. Because you see he's worth it. Like that woman I talked about. It wasn't a burden to fall down. It was everything to her. He was everything to her. And so tonight, I believe that many of you watching, God is going to show you, he's not going to use you because of the strength that you possess. But I believe it's in that weakness that God is going to show you what to embrace, that you would fully depend on the strength that is found in him. So tonight, I'm going to pray for every person watching, every addiction, whether it's pornography, whether it's drugs, whatever it may be, whether you're feeling rejected or hurt from things that weren't your fault. That bondage will be broken tonight and chains would fall off for you, and that you would see that it's not your place to carry that anymore. That what the gospel is that Jesus steps into your place, your rightly deserved place as a sinner, so that you can step into your undeserved place as a son. So tonight, as we welcome up whoever's coming up next, I just pray this blessed you. I pray this encouraged you and revealed the heart of God in any way.